was one of our greatest contemporary Christian songwriters who made it his business to prove that the devil did not have all the good music. I knew him, and I am going to miss him and his talent. Sir Cliff Richard, the British Elvis. I am overjoyed for Larry. Everything he sang about, reached for, and couldn't put into words is now his. Sheila Walsh, singer, speaker. People should know that Larry was a unique and gifted artist, an extraordinary songwriter and producer. Words fail to say just how influential he really was. He was one of a kind. I am proud to have known him. Phil Kagi, singer, songwriter, musician. Larry was, in those early years, my mentor. Larry had me live with him to teach me the craft of songwriting. I will always treasure those beginning years in ministry with him. Steve Camp, singer, songwriter. Larry's song, Pardon Me. Are you kidding me? I swear it stands up to any pop song from the top writers of his era. It stands up to the Beatles' best ballads. I was 12 years old when I first heard In Another Land, and I was very moved, and still am. It was amazing music to my ears. I bumped into Larry backstage at the Dove Awards one year. I was young and success was coming my way, and I'll always remember Larry telling me, "Clay, if you can't sing your songs on street corners, then why are you singing them at all?" Over the years, I've embraced his words. Clay Cross, award-winning Christian singer. Since meeting Larry in London in 1972, we had incessant discussions about faith, art, and life. The thing that impressed me when I first met him was that he wasn't using music as a vehicle for many sermons. He had a deep love and understanding of rock and roll. He also had an amazing curiosity about popular culture. To be with him was to embark on a roller coaster ride of spiritual reflection, social insight, artistic vision, and outrageous comedy. As with most roller coaster rides, there were also times at which you thought you were coming off the tracks. Heaven will be a brighter place with Larry Norman. Steve Turner, Rolling Stone journalist and author. He was a genius, no doubt, who changed the direction and content of Christian music. Was there ever anyone better on stage with just a guitar and a microphone? For entertainment value and persuasive substance, no one. He touched tens of thousands of lives, offering the hope of the gospel and an insightful perspective on social matters. Any listening of Only Visiting This Planet, the quintessential album of the genre, bears out these qualities. Philip F. Mangano, former manager, now Executive Director of the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, appointed by President George W. Bush. I was always amazed and spellbound at what he did with one voice and one nylon string guitar. I cherish the times I spent with Larry and for what he gave us. He will always have a place in my heart. Malcolm Wilde, formerly of Malcolm and Alwyn, now pastor, Calvary Chapel. At his core, Larry was a teacher. He took on a gift for instruction that informed his performances, art, and life. The hours we spent together were always infused with a passion for learning and taking in new ideas. He was an able and patient teacher when it came to the craft of songwriting. Larry's performances had this teaching element which enraptured his audiences. Tom Howard, singer, songwriter, arranger. Larry will continue to be an inspiration to me. He was my Elvis. Dylan was a fan, McCartney was a fan, DC Talk was a fan. Larry left a mark on the terrain of modern Christian culture. Larry was a walking, talking legend, full of love and insight. He tried to relate every story to his belief in Christ. This was the mark of a true modern missionary. I think of Larry that way. Relevant, on the edge, classic, literate, and always arresting. Kevin Max, solo artist, former member of DC Talk. Larry Norman was a true cutting-edge man of God. Larry had passion for Jesus mixed with an understanding of people. He understood the struggle of the church with the radical person of Jesus. With his fearless spirit, he pioneered sharing Jesus in the modern world. Larry was a Jesus revolutionary owned by no one but his Lord. He cared, loved, and stayed faithful to following Jesus. He was free, and in his freedom, he threatened the normal and stretched believers, and in it all, he lifted up Jesus. I'm glad I had the privilege of being by his side. I can still hear him saying, "See you later, blessed, and don't let them make you normal. Stay radical." Arthur Blessed, itinerant evangelist. All music should be like Larry's music. His songs were real and honest, and you could hear the compassion in them. When they came on, you didn't have to ask, "Who is that?" You knew. The example he gave of courageously being himself is probably his greatest legacy. In a day when so much music runs together in such a commercialized, calculated sameness, that is saying a lot. Pat Terry, singer-songwriter, leader of the Pat Terry Group. The release of Larry's first solo album, Upon This Rock, dovetailed perfectly the Jesus movement, so it was natural that Christians would forever associate him with the Jesus People revival. A fearless young man barely into his 20s, he burst upon the scene and into our hearts with the bold proposition that Christian music was anemic and needed a transfusion. He released 3 groundbreaking albums and gave the young revival its hauntingly beautiful theme song, "I Wish We'd All Been Ready." The song set the tone for the prophetic message that was woven into all of his music and tempted a generation of young guitarists to venture past the 4th fret. Early in his career, he opened for The Doors and Jimi Hendrix, but I like to remember the Sunday afternoons when he would suddenly show up backstage at one of our makeshift festivals, unannounced and unscheduled, but ready to sing his heart out for the thousands of kids assembled who had played his records till the grooves wore out. But for those of us who knew and remember our old friend, Larry David Norman, his 60-year visit was all too short. Dwayne Peterson, Hollywood Free Press. The first time the Way played at the Hollywood Palladium, we opened for Larry. I kept thinking, why all the build-up for this guy like he was a superstar? As soon as he started playing, he had the audience in the palm of his hand. He had such an aura of God around him, but he was singing to all these street people on their level. I went, okay, now I see what he's about. He was about reaching down to the homeless, helping them up, reaching out to drug addicts and sacrificing his own time. He was about singing in Hollywood on the streets and begging people to give Jesus a chance. He was about rock music and the gospel. He certainly helped me to become a better Christian and inspired me to reach out to the edge of Christian rock. God bless Larry. Dana Engel, musician, The Way.
Boy, he's written some wonderful stuff. Probably my personal favorite would be I Am a Servant. For Larry and I, who had a rich creative partnership for a dozen years and then had a lot of personal and business differences, it's really nice for us to be able to look at each other eye to eye and say, you know, what unites us in God's grace and what unites us in Christ is far greater than any of the stuff that divides us.
Once I had the opportunity to meet him. I was about 16 and I was nervous because I loved the man as a musician and he spoke to my soul, especially when he berated the idiots who attempted to rein him in. He looked me in the eyes, shook my hand and asked, "Are you a musician?" I thought nobody would ever notice. He sealed my fate then and there. He was a giant. He was a man after God's own heart, imperfect yet anointed. Larry was the closest thing to Dylan for me. He was not made for these times. Rick Elias, songwriter, musician. Larry left this earth and the world has lost a prophet. The first verse of his song, The Outlaw, could have as easily been written about him. No one knew where he came from, but many wished he would go back to wherever that was. He was an outlaw to everything established, and for that he embodied the renegade nature of Christ's first coming. When you think of it, a guy with shoulder-length hair who sang about sipping whiskey from a paper cup is probably not going to go over very well with the Sunday morning worship crowd, especially 35 years ago. But then again, he wasn't speaking to those folks anyway. To his credit, he never adjusted, like the rest of us did, to the Christian culture that grew out of the movement he helped found. He never compromised. He stayed an outlaw until his death. In a time of spiritual revolution, Larry Norman carried the torch. John Fisher, singer-songwriter. It was 1979. I was in the parking lot of my church and my youth pastor gave me Only Visiting This Planet. That night, the walls came down as I heard music for the first time that connected with my faith. For the thousands of times and millions of people that I have sung, Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music To? We all owe a dear and unrepayable debt to Larry. He was remarkably generous to me with his heart and art. All these years I have stood on his shoulders. Geoff Moore, Christian singer-songwriter.
If God is my God.